Welcome to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, where every week I take a look inside the world of film and television with those who have lived it and experienced it. I am your host, Derek Diamond, and coming up on today's show, you'll be hearing my conversation with filmmakers Christopher Soren Kelly and Jessica Graham about their latest film, The Tangle, which is one of the most unique sci-fi films that I've watched in quite some time, but we'll be getting to that a little bit later on in the show. I've got to talk about a film that I recently watched and I've been anticipating for quite some time, even dating back to 2014 with the potential of this movie, and that is Godzilla vs. Kong. Before I get into my thoughts on that, I want to backtrack to some fun moments that I have associated with this monster universe, if you will. I can remember back in 2014 being excited for the Godzilla movie. And I'll admit, growing up, I wasn't like a diehard Godzilla fan. I always thought the character was really cool. But my only real experience, other than knowing the basics of who Godzilla was, and I knew of the old films from way back in the day, but I was technically introduced to the character through the 1998 film with Matthew Broderick. And before I get lynched about that, I will admit I enjoyed that movie growing up. And as I've gotten older and I've watched it since then, I definitely see the flaws in it and why a lot of people don't like it. But technically it was my introduction into that universe. So fast forward to 2014, we see all the trailers for it, seeing Godzilla, wrecking things and seeing how cool he looked. And I thought, I've got to see this movie. And myself and my friends Adam and Joey, all three of us were working for the Blue Wahoos. Adam and I still do. Joey, not anymore, but he was a trainee at the time. And we kept going back and forth because the movie came out during a homestand. So we were thinking, are we going to be able to see this opening weekend? And we decided as soon as, a game was over, I think it was that Friday game, we decided to do it. And we rushed to the theater. We didn't do any type of meeting or anything after the game was over. And we made it right as the movie started. And it's one of my favorite movie-going experiences of my time on this earth. And I love the movie, and I couldn't wait to see more. So then, we have Kong Skull Island come out after that, which I very much enjoyed. And there are elements of the Peter Jackson version of King Kong that I like. But to me, Skull Island is what the Kong franchise needed to be. It just had a different feel. It felt cooler. And I got the vibe that Peter Jackson was trying to get with his version, where it was essentially a remake of the 1933 version. But Skull Island was something different. And I very much enjoyed it. And I'll get to why I enjoy those types of movies. Because don't get me wrong, I love a good drama. I love story. Story is what made me fall in love with film, but I'll get to that in a second. So then King of the Monsters comes out. I want to say it was Skull Island, then King of the Monsters that came out. Godzilla 2 was not as well received, or it didn't make as much money, so they were kind of on the rocks about where they were going to go with the franchise, but then it led to what we got this past week, Godzilla vs. Kong. And it was such a fun experience watching this movie. To me, it was exactly what it needed to be. I know the human element has been getting a lot of flack, but this movie was exactly what it needed to be. I wasn't looking for Citizen Kane. I wasn't looking for Casablanca. All I needed was a giant lizard and a giant ape beating the crap out of each other. The fight scenes were great. I actually enjoyed the story element of the film. As I mentioned, the human interaction, or the human element, I should say, has been getting a lot of flack because they say, oh, well, the story's not that great, or the acting's not that great. Again, I'm not looking for a deep, moving story with this. Not every movie has to be Citizen Kane. That's the beauty of movies as an art form, is you can tell so many different stories and convey so many different emotions and feelings through the characters, through the effects, through the whole film. And honestly, that's why I liked Godzilla vs. Kong so much. I enjoy a good summer blockbuster, and I get into this, in my conversation later on, but I love the story of indie film. I do find the stories from a lot of indie films to be much better than your big budget films you get, like even from the Marvel aspect or the DC aspect of it. But this was just pure fun. And I'm so happy that this was put in theaters. And don't get me wrong, I think it's great that Warner Brothers is doing the deal with HBO Max, and it gives me the platform to be able to watch it in my own home if I want to over the next month while it's out. But this is a theater movie, and we're seeing that people are still wanting to go to the movie theaters. And the biggest example is with this film, because it made $9 million on opening day. So I personally think that the HBO Max model that they have with Warner Brothers releasing those films on HBO Max at the same time, I think that will still be a thing through 2021, but I think will be gone after 2022, because we are seeing that people, if they have the option to go to a theater or watch a movie at home, they're still going to a theater. And I think that will vary because it depends on the movie. You know, I mentioned Mulan on last week's show. Yeah, it had the premiere access with Disney Plus, but if you're a family of 4 or a family of 5 and you're going to spend probably more than that to go to a theater, then yeah, you pay the extra $30 and you watch it with your family at home and you have a night in. But in this case, I'd much rather go to a theater. And there's something just so unique about the movie theater experience. It's just so different than watching it at home. And don't get me wrong, I love watching movies at home. But movies like this, you want to be in a big room with a big screen, bag of popcorn, a giant soda, and some candy, and you just have a fun time at the theater. And I did want to mention real quick, it really bothers me that the SnyderVerse fandom, those that are, you know, staunchly for Zack Snyder being able to continue his vision with the Justice League and, you know, the potential sequels that were to come of it, that there were reports that fans of that were bombing Godzilla vs. Kong, and those reviews have been taken down from Rotten Tomatoes and other websites. But I'm thinking, what good is it going to do if you're blasting another film? I mean, maybe it makes Warner Brothers think, well, the MonsterVerse isn't going to work, but hey, people loved Zack Snyder's Justice League, so that's the direction we're going to go in. Maybe that's the case. I have no idea. But to me, it's just, if I'm a fan of something, I'm going to support it. You know, I love Star Wars. I love the MCU. I love so many other different movies that I will be in support for, and I will wave the flag. I will wave the Star Wars flag and the Marvel flag. But if there's films that I don't like, you know, like some of the DC films I don't really care for, I don't go online and say, oh, this movie sucks, you should never watch it. Or I make a movement to try and get it removed or get it replaced by something else. I just don't say anything. And I tell people the best way you can support a film property is with your money, with your wallet. If you don't like something, then don't go see it. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, why are there so many Fast and the Furious movies? Well, it's because people go see them. And are they visually great? Yes. Are they great on story? Usually not. But that's not the reason why people go see those movies. There wouldn't be, you know, soon to be 9 if people didn't enjoy them. They keep making money, so the studios are going to keep making them. So that's been kind of my thing. Like I get irritated when I see so much negativity on social media and then through movie reviews, because people think that, you know, they have to, I don't know what they're thinking, if I'm being completely honest. It bothers me that, and I'm not saying that my mindset is perfect or anything, but it irritates me when people, because they don't personally like something, try to get something else canceled. You know, for no real reason other than they just don't like it. If there's a moral reason, that's completely different. But if it's something you just don't like, like the Godzilla versus Kong reviews. Like that to me is completely asinine. But that being said, I very much enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong. I can't wait to watch it again. Definitely go out and see it. It's exactly what it needs to be, and I'm so happy that it's in the theater. And it's going to continue to do better because more theaters are going to open back up. The capacity is going to increase over the next several months. So this movie, along with others, I think we're going to see an increase in box office revenue. Will we get to the level of Endgame or Avatar? Probably not. I don't know that we'll ever see that in my lifetime or our lifetime, because there are going to be some people who are, forever worried about getting sick or worried about getting COVID. So I think the days of the billions of dollars in box office revenue, I think may be over, but theaters are going to still be around and the theater experience will still be around, which makes me very happy. I can't wait to watch this film again. I can't wait to watch other films later this summer as, the capacity is increasing and things like that. So I'm very much looking forward to it personally. But overall, go watch Godzilla vs. Kong. You will not regret it. It's such a fun movie. Is it perfect? No, but it suits its purpose and it's exactly what it needs to be. The fight scenes are incredible. I personally didn't really dislike the acting and the human story all that much. I know it has to be there, but that's not why I went. What I went for was to watch the fight between Godzilla and Kong, or I should say the fights between Godzilla and Kong. And not to give any spoilers, but it ended to me how it should. And I hope that universe continues. I know they've left it, kind of open to see what's going to happen financially. I hope it continues because these movies are fun. And that's what makes movies great. That's what makes it my favorite art form, is you can tell so many different stories in different ways. Once again, not everything has to be Citizen Kane or Casablanca. You can have just a fun thrill ride of watching two giant monsters beat the crap out of each other. And last thing, I can't forget to mention this, but Pensacola actually gets a pretty big shout out in this movie. And it was really cool to see, even though as the movie was progressing, as the beginning of the film takes place allegedly in Pensacola, and that's where Godzilla attacks Apex for the first time. We're looking at the exterior shots, and I look over at Samantha, and we're both like, where in Pensacola is this supposed to be? I mean, it obviously wasn't filmed in Pensacola, but at the same time, like on one hand, it was cool that Pensacola got a shout out, but at least, I wish it looked a little more accurate when it comes to the depiction of the city. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, either way, it's cool that the city got a shout out. So it was cool because it got a decent reaction in the theater here. But at the same time, I was like, come on, just make it look a little more like Pensacola. But those are my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong. But coming up next is my conversation with filmmakers Christopher Soren Kelly and Jessica Graham. They're here to talk about their latest film, The Tangle. And the cool thing about doing this podcast is it gives me the opportunity to watch films like this that I otherwise probably wouldn't have the opportunity to. So I love the look and feel of this film. It's very unique, and I get into it in the conversation, but I couldn't really find another film to compare it to. And I think that's really cool, especially with indie film, because a lot of things have been done. Pretty much everything's been done in the world of film. So it was nice to see something that was a little different. It was great getting to chat with them about how they got started in their career, how they came together to make this film happen, their experience making it. It was just an all-around great conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jessica Graham and Christopher Soren Kelly. Welcome back to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, and it is my pleasure this week to introduce not one, but two guests talking about their latest film, The Tangle, which I had the pleasure of watching recently, and one of the most unique films that I've watched in quite some time, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Joining me first is the writer-director of the film, Mr. Christopher Soren Kelly. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Absolutely. No, I've been looking forward to this. And also joining us is one of the actresses from the film, Miss Jessica Graham. Jessica, how are you?
I am great. I'm really happy to be here with you, Derek. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's just dive right in. I watched this film as we are recording this interview just a couple of hours ago. So I've got, fresh perspective on it. I very much enjoyed it. As I said, it was a very unique film and one that, as I was watching it, I was thinking, what film could I compare this to? And I got a little bit of a Memento vibe from it, but
Cool.
other than that, I couldn't really think of anything that I could really compare it to. So, Chris, we'll start with you. As are the writer director, how did you come up with the idea for the story?
Um, well, first of all, I have to say that this could be problematic from a marketing perspective, but that's my favorite compliment is that we've been getting is that people are like, I can't really compare this to anything else. It's really hard to make a film and you have to spend a lot of time at it. So it's kind of fun to not make something that's already been made, it's not going to be for everybody necessarily, but it's definitely appreciated that it sort of has a unique flavor. And in that vein, there wasn't really an idea. It was I just sort of started writing in like my wheelhouse. Like I've been reading sci-fi since I was a preteen, so geeky sci-fi and and I think about it a lot, the way the technology is going and where it's going. A movie like Blade Runner sort of influences some of my stylistic tastes. And poetry is a big part of my life as well. Both my mother was a poet, my stepfather was a poet, my grandfather was a professor of English. Like, so that's like, I just started writing in my wheelhouse. Jessica and I sort of brainstormed a lot of the story together. I would sort of pitch what I was thinking and she would, we talked it over and I just wrote it from there. Yeah.
And Jessica, what was your reaction when you were presented with this idea?
I was really excited. I also love sci-fi, and my dad was a huge sci-fi film fan, and so I was like pretending to be Luke Skywalker when I was 3, and I was in love with Spock when I was like 11 and 12, and so I was like I had a deep connection with sci-fi already, and poetry. While I would not call myself a poet. It's definitely part of how I move and live in the world. And so that was very exciting to me as well. We had originally talked about making a different project, and Chris and I discussed that in order to make a film and make it now, which was back then, but the now back then, we needed to come up with something that was doable on a really small budget. And so, like Chris said, we bounced around these ideas, and then he sat down and wrote this beautiful script in what seemed like 24 hours. It was a little longer, but it did not take him very long. So I was incredibly impressed and also really grateful because he created the role of Laurel for me. And there's nothing quite like that, having somebody write you a role.
I've heard that from numerous actors when a writer/writer director approaches them and say, "Oh, I have this role with you in mind." I can't imagine much of a better compliment than that.
It's pretty special, yeah.
And it makes me so happy that you mentioned, both of you, that you loved sci-fi, because I'm the same way. I can remember watching the original Star Wars movie at a very early age, and since then I was hooked on the genre, and since then watching movies like a Blade Runner, Star Trek, so many other sci-fi classics that have come out since then. So when I was presented, the opportunity to watch this movie and I read what it was about, I was instantly hooked because of that natural, sci-fi taste that I've developed from an early age. But I also like the sci-fi films that in a way touch on, what could happen in the future. And, well, I'm sure we'll get into the plot a little bit as we progress. But as I was watching it, I kept thinking to myself, I wouldn't be shocked if this or something like this actually happened. Yeah. Chris, as you were writing the story, did you have those same thoughts?
Absolutely. In fact, there's a little part of me that's like, this is just too plausible. Like, this is obviously what's going to happen. It's not even that exciting, Obviously, that was okay. There's enough excitement in the movie, but yeah, I think we're almost there. And, obviously this particular thing requires certain technological innovations that may or may not be possible, but they're at least plausible. And I think if they were done, we would end up in a world like this pretty quick.
Yeah, I personally would not be surprised.
Yeah,
at all.
It's not that different from where we are now, honestly. So.
No, for sure. So once the script is complete and you guys decide that you're going to make this movie happen, what was the first step after that? Like, how did you get from idea to script to the actual shooting?
Well, I really wrote the script. We had planned to make a feature that year. We had made a few short films together that had done well on the festival circuit, and they're very time intensive to make a short film. So we were just figured it was time to move up a level. So we had planned all along, and fortunately, based on the performance of our short films, we had some investors who were willing to give us a small amount of money that we knew we could get together to make this movie. So we sort of had that all almost in place when the script was being written, and then we finalized all that over the summer. Just started doing the pre-production, is trying to find locations and finish up the casting and do all the pre-production stuff. Just in time to shoot less than 6 months later, I think.
And how long did it take you guys to shoot the film?
Well, so that's a hard question, but the stuff that happens in that main location, we shot that over, I think, a 2-week period and about 10 days of shooting. But then over the next 2 years, I filled in all that other stuff, all the other things. There was another main shoot with the Speakeasy location, which is in downtown Los Angeles. And then I shot a lot of those sort of out in the wilderness stuff over a couple years. And then the final shoot was that watchtower in the snow shot.
Yeah, I liked you could tell that a good portion of the film took place in one central location, but it was good that you got to see a variety of places too. And I've always curious about features because I've personally never worked on one, but you hear several stories of, some take months to shoot. I've heard some that take as short as, 4 or 5 days, which is insane to me.
That's insane,
yeah. I had an interview on the show a couple of weeks ago where they filmed an entire feature. I mean, they only used a couple of locations, but they shot the whole thing in 4 days. And I'm like, you guys are out of your mind.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, what we did was crazy too. We shot a lot of pages, especially the first weekend, but I did write it, with that in mind. We set up the style of the movie were these, not a lot of light sources that had to be changed. So we'd be able to cover a whole scene without a lot of light changes, and long dialogue scenes, and the actors had rehearsed and memorized the full scenes. And so it was planned that way, but nonetheless was definitely slightly insane.
But I'm sure you were very happy with the result of it.
I really am. It's fun when you get to the end and you're like, that's what I pictured. Of course it's different in all sorts of ways, but in the end, it's like has the flavor of what we hoped for. Yeah,
it's always gratifying when you see the pages and the words that you've written come to life, and you're like, oh, it's how I imagined it. But something I'm also curious about with the two of you, because with indie film, you tend to wear a lot of different hats. Because I know, Chris, you were the writer-director. Jessica, you were also a producer on the film. Talk to me about what your guys' experience was like, not just with the shooting, but also the behind-the-scenes aspect of it as well, because there's also a business side to the film industry that I feel like isn't really talked about enough. And, Jessica, we'll start with you. How was the whole process, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well, as someone who did multiple roles?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like a labor of love, it was a passion project, and continues to be, because there's still lots that happens behind the scenes, even after the film is released. And for me, it's one of the most challenging things to act and produce. I did a lot of it though, back in a past life when I was a theater producer, and I would produce and I would act, and I would sometimes have multiple shows going on at the same time. And so I had that muscle. But I will tell you, after this experience of the Tangle, as much as I'm so glad I had it, I probably won't do that again. Like, I probably will not be a producer in that way, hands-on in so many different areas and act, because it's a lot, especially as I get a little older. It's like I don't have the same stamina. But there's something that I love about it, which is that you're involved in the whole process. Like, as just an actor on something, like, you show up and you do your days and then who knows? But with this, like, I got to be involved in every step of the way. I got to help glue the pieces onto the helmet. I got to see every single cut of the film. I got to give my input, and I love that aspect of it. Our house kind of became a workshop. We built out some of the costume pieces, some of the prop pieces here. It also became a rental house because we brought things from our house to the set. I just remember us, like, a whole huge carload of stuff going in, and so it was like we really lived it for that period of time. And luckily, Chris and I are pretty even keeled. We're both meditation teachers as well, so we were able to function, as a couple as well, wearing that hat too. So we both were acting in it. Chris wore all his hats, I wore mine, and we also came home together at night. So, I think we did pretty well with all that.
Well, it's fascinating that you bring up that you're both meditation teachers, because I'm sure with putting that amount of work into a project from both the producing as well as the acting side, the acting side alone, especially if you have to do emotional roles, it can take an emotional toll on you. So I find that fascinating that in a way you knew, it seems like, how to deal with all the stress of working on a project like this.
Yeah, it really translates. I've since started directing as well. And on set, I always have, each day begins with meditation for everyone. And some people like kind of roll their eyes, and some people are like, this is amazing, but it really changes it changes the tone. So yeah, I feel incredibly grateful to be able to bring that perspective and that sort of embodiment into the film work, because it's inherently stressful. Even if you're really good at managing stress, it's just hard. It's just hard to make movies, especially for no money. So yeah.
Well, that's great to hear too, because, I think one of the more positive aspects that have come out of the COVID-19 pandemic is the increased awareness of mental health. So I think, hearing you say that, your first day on set, you meditate. And I think that's something that, I think everyone should keep in mind. If it's not meditation, something else to help manage stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important.
But what about you, Chris? How was your experience with managing all the different hats that you wore? Because you also acted in the film as well. So you were actor, writer, director. What did you not do? I think might be the better question.
Well, we had a bunch of talented people that did things that I could not have done. So, Robert was the DP, and the look of the film, I just couldn't be happier with it, and he deserves most of the credit for that. The costumes were done by Annie, and she passed away a couple years after we shot that film, and she's in our hearts. The set design, which was that, especially that main set, that was a warehouse that was just a horrible, ugly place, and they made all that. So there are a lot of things I didn't do, yeah, the acting, I fortunately had done it a few times before. It's an advantage to have an actor who will do whatever you tell them to do and is free. So that's me. That's one reason I cast myself. I know it might feel like an ego thing, but it really is more of a practicality. Like, okay, I can handle this. And also, since I'm the one out in the wilderness, that's just me and the DP. I don't need to pay anybody else. It's just me out there, So and those are real practical considerations about it. And I wrote the role going, this will be relatively easy for me. This will be in my wheelhouse. This will, for most of it. And on top of that, I have Jessica, Josh, who's the other actor in the main part of that, Carter. He was our acting coach for years. So if I was going off the rails, he would give me a note, or Jessica would give me a note. So I had help and support in everything I was doing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest lesson that each of you learned while working on the Tangle?
Jessica, you ready?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I mean, I have some takeaways. They're not very exciting, though. I mean, a lot of the takeaways are just what I want to do next time, kind of takeaways. And I don't really want to act in the next one I write and direct. And I don't want to edit it, and just things like that. It's like, and I think Jessica was mentioning that just is that, you have to do what you have to do to get these films done, but then you can set an intention for the next one about what it's going to look like. And I really want to focus in. I love acting, and hopefully I'll be cast by other people in other things. But I want to focus in on my projects on, being able to sit back and really work on telling the story.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I have a few. One is, I think this is probably the hardest I've ever worked on. Well, certainly on a film performance. I've done a lot of theater, and there maybe were a few of those that were really, really challenging, but I worked really hard on this. And I'm someone who in my life, I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky, but like I've been able to kind of get by, like just kind of like, whoo, I got it. Like just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and like do well in a lot of areas. And that wasn't going to work with this project, with this character. I couldn't just wing it. And I had to step out of my comfort zone to not wing it, because it's a skill that I have, and it's a skill that I can depend on, but it couldn't with this. It needed actually a lot of effort. And I had, in the very beginning of the rehearsal process, I was like freaked out and like didn't think I would be able to do it. And I remember emailing a filmmaker who's a lot further along in her career and just kind of saying like, I don't know if I can do this. And, and she said, some of the most effortless seeming performances, the performances that just flow, the actor had to work really hard. And there was actually a lot of tension, like kind of tension involved in making that performance work. And I took that to heart, and I did a bunch of sessions with a coach, and I just worked really hard. And so I think in some ways I got a lesson of like, if you work hard, it pays off, because I feel like this is one of my best performances, and I'm really proud of it. And so I think that's a big lesson, like work hard, like, and I'm a little old to be learning that lesson, but there you go.
Oh, you're never too old to learn. But you bring up a great point. You bring up that in a way you challenged yourself to do this specific role. And that's in any profession of what you do, whether it's film or whatever the case may be, you should look for new ways to challenge yourself, because if you become complacent, then it's like, what am I doing here? I'm just been doing the same thing over and over again. Where's the challenge of, doing something new? So
Yeah,
I think that's cool
absolutely.
that you did that.
Thank you.
Chris, I did want to ask you, because you mentioned you also edited your film. Do you find it better to edit the film yourself or get someone else to do it? Because speaking as someone, I did my first short film a couple of years ago, and I edited it myself. And while I liked how it turned out, I was thinking I would have loved to have brought someone else in to kind of give a fresh set of eyes on the movie and not put it together the way that I would have done it. So what are your thoughts on, as far as being the writer, director / editor?
I've never done it any other way, so it's hard for me to evaluate the other way.
Gotcha.
I look forward to having an editor, but I mean, I know I'll be closely involved in that process. So even if there's an editor, I will be there very closely involved. I honestly have a lot of trust in my ability to see how a scene is supposed to play out. I have a lot of trust in my ability to, I'll say, protect the actors. That's not even the right word, but just to I really value getting every line be the most authentic line. And, I don't know if I would trust anyone else to see that. So I will need to be there, but I do look forward to, but there are lots of places where there's puzzles that need to be solved, and I didn't need to solve them all. Like someone else could have solved them, like how do we get this part of the story? And that would be great to have help in that area.
No, for sure. To backtrack a little bit, Jessica, we'll start with you. What was it that made each of you want to pursue a career in the film industry?
Well, I was performing in one way or another since I was a little kid. And, I was writing, directing, and starring in shows that I would force all my siblings to be in and then make the adults watch. I was like choreographing dances to like Aerosmith songs. Like I was like always creating some sort of production or performance for people to watch. And when we got a video camera, when there were video cameras in my life, which was kind of a big deal as a kid because it wasn't a normal thing to have one. Like I was always like creating some weird sort of, I don't know, some sort of strange emotional movie with on my own or with my friends or something. And so it was always in me. But when I was 11, I went to this like hippie school, and the teacher cast me as Antigone, and I was really scared. And I was like, because it was more official, right? It wasn't like I was like just making up a show. And so I was scared to do it. And she said, no, I really think you should do it. And I did it. And the reaction I got from the adults, specifically from my dad, was very impactful. And I was like, I want more of this. I want more of this positive attention. And so in some ways, the drive was about like getting attention and getting approval and being seen. And that was a part of it that sort of layered in, because originally it was just the joy of storytelling. But then it started to get layered in this like need to be approved of, to be seen, to be celebrated, to be applauded, right? And so as I got older and got really into my spiritual practice and meditation and all of that, the need to get that approval and that being seen and appreciated and being good enough started to slip away. And for a while, I actually wasn't really acting that much, and I wasn't really engaged with that part of my life. But then I rediscovered the actual joy and importance of storytelling, and how it's something that has been with us always as human beings. And there's something incredibly important about continuing that. So that's where it started. And then it took me a long time to get back to that original reason, that original desire. And I can say at this point, I feel really alive in that space in a way that I don't anywhere else. Like there's a kind of aliveness and a kind of joy that comes in. And that's kind of, for me, that's reason enough to do something.
That's fantastic. What about you, Chris?
I always find these questions difficult. I don't know why. I was always creating. I came from a family of creators and artists, and I just always was creating. And the same thing as Jessica, making little videos with my cousins, or memorizing things my grandfather gave us, or writing or drawing or whatever. So that was always there. It was strange. I was getting my graduate degree in philosophy, and I just always knew I wanted to be doing art at the same time. So I started taking acting classes and started performing in short films and then feature films. And eventually I was teaching philosophy, but then I got cast in a feature film called Ink, which I was like, all right, I'll go do that now. And I just stopped teaching and did that for 90 days and started acting from then on, but I was always, all through all that time, I was always creating stuff.
And that's usually the case, is that you find that kind of creative edge growing up, and then you're finding ways, like whether it's film, writing, acting, finding that outlet. And I'm sure both of you agree with me when I say this, there's nothing else quite like it.
Yeah. My life's about creativity at this point. Really, it really is about creation, and there isn't anything like it. Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up here, do both of you have any upcoming projects that you might want to talk about? Chris, we'll start with you.
Sure. The main thing I'm most excited about, I have a lot of projects lying around, but the thing I'm most excited about is my next feature film script, which I've got a rough draft of, and it's a meditation thriller. So that was the one I want to make next, and I like the script and I'm excited about it. Yeah. So.
Meditation thriller. Like, yeah. I just want to see it based off of that description alone.
That's by far the best pitch. If I start going into the plot, I haven't really figured out how to make it work, but like the meditation thriller gets you interested. So.
I think that could just be the title, meditation thriller.
Love that.
Jessica, what about you?
Yeah. So I along with the Tangle, I just had a short that I directed that was released. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Into Light, and it's about Inez Milholland, who was a suffragist who actually died for the cause, for the fighting for the women's right to vote. And so I'm really proud of that. It was my third project as a director, and it was definitely like the biggest budget, biggest crew, biggest, like I like 30 extras one day. So it was like, it was big. And so that's out, that's available to see. I'm really excited about a project called The Hunter, which actually Chris is in as well. Oh, yeah. And that's coming out it was originally a feature film, and it will be a feature film, but first it's going to be an episodic. So it's this very interesting release strategy. It's going to be on April 9th, released on Docs Now. It's not a documentary, but it's a very, very strange film that I could see why it's going to be on a documentary platform. So that's coming out. And then with that same director, Alexander P. Gutterman, I'm in development for the next project, which equally as exciting as having someone write a role for you is having someone say, you get to help me create this role for you. And so that's what we did with The Hunter. And now that's what we're doing with this next film, which is called Threshold. And very, very excited about that. Really looking forward to how that unfolds. And it's going to be a couple years before it's actually shooting, but they're already kind of in the process of putting it together. So I'm super excited about that.
Jessica's a lot better at this than I am. Yeah, The Hunter is coming out on April 9th. I'm excited about that as well. I also have a short film that I co-wrote and acted in called Behemoth, which I'm really proud of. And that should come out sometime soon. I really would like people to watch that. I'm really, really happy with it.
It's pretty amazing. Chris is really good in it. It's just a really cool film.
I look forward to seeing it whenever it's available. What is one piece of advice that each of you could give, and Chris, will start with you, to an aspiring filmmaker?
I guess the advice I would give is do it. You know, and what I mean by that is just iterate it. Do as much of it as you can. This is really the only way to learn it. So probably not the best idea to be like, okay, I'm not going to make a film until I can make a Marvel movie, right? You got to make as many things as you possibly can, spend as much time creating as you can. And that's the way you get better and better at it. And, you know, when we were making the Tangle, I wouldn't have been able to do it 5 years before, much less 10 years before, much less 20 years before. There's so many things I'd learned and internalized by that point because I'd done it so many times. And so you just have to spend the time doing it, enjoy it while you're doing it. Don't get too worried about the outcomes at the beginning. It will pay off in the end if you love it.
What about you, Jessica?
I would say two things. One is actually circling back to kind of where we began, which is like, take care of your mental health and take care of your body. I've navigated mental health and physical health issues my whole life. And by taking care of those things, I'm able to be a better artist. And so if that's up for you, take care of those parts, put that first, actually. And then tell the stories that you want to tell. Tell the stories that are a yes for you, whether you're acting, whether you're directing, or both. Like, don't tell some story you think someone else wants you to tell, or is like the right story or the marketable story. Tell the stories you want to tell, because only you can tell those stories. And that's what is exciting and vital and so powerful about film.
And that's why I think it's the best art form that's out there, because it's so unique compared to sculpting, painting. You can convey so many emotions with film. So I agree with all that advice. I think that's fantastic. And finally, do you guys have any website or social media that you'd like to plug so the viewers and listeners can follow you? And how can people watch The Tangle?
Yeah, so The Tangle is now available on Amazon in 68 English-speaking territories. It's available on Google Play. It's available on YouTube, and I think on Tubi TV now for to buy or to rent. You can check out our social media channels. The Tangle on Instagram and Facebook, it's The Tangle. On Twitter, it's The Tangle Movie. And our website for The Tangle is thetanglemovie.com. And then if you want to come hang out with me on social media, I'm most fond of Instagram, and I'm Jessica Clark Graham there.
And I'm Christopher Soren Kelly on Instagram. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to do this interview, and thank you for the opportunity to watch The Tangle. I very much enjoyed it. As I mentioned, it's one of the most unique films that I've watched in a long time, and I highly recommend that anybody go watch it. So thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate it.
Derek. Thanks.
Thanks again to Chris and Jessica for coming on the show to talk about The Tangle. I had so much fun watching this film. Be sure to check it out and follow them on social media to find out what they'll be up to next. For next week's show, I'll be talking about the film Warmed Over Krautrock with writer-director Mark Thompson, as well as actors Adam Weber, Kate Dalton, and Derek Elstro. Had so much fun watching this film as well. Be sure to come back next week for that really fun episode. But until then, you can check out past episodes of the show on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon Music, really anywhere you get your podcast for free. Just search for The Derek Diamond Experience. You can also find me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at DDiamondPodcast. You can also watch the video versions of the show on YouTube. Just search for Derek Diamond. Also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. I just added some new perks to the Patreon if you want to vote on the monthly top 5 discussions, as well as get access to some of my film scripts that I've been writing, early access to episodes. You're able to ask guests of the show questions. Just check out patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast for that. And I have to mention, you heard at the top of the show a new theme song from the Unicorn Wranglers, their new single For a Good Time Call, which you can find on Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. Check them out on social media. They're so fun. I love the new song. I can't wait to hear more from them over the next few weeks. That's going to do it for this week's show, so enjoy the rest of your week. Have a safe and fun weekend. Thank you for tuning in to another awesome episode of the Derek Diamond Experience. I am your host, Derek Diamond, and we'll see you guys back here next Thursday.